RCSD, what is the controller's office doing right now?
Well, the mayor and the state legislators in the area asked us to come in and take a look what accounts for the shortfall. So we have engaged an audit. I directed our team in the Rochester office to put other work aside and focus on Rochester City School District. So last week we began the engagement, do a risk assessment. Our team now will plan out what the scope of the audit will be. Audits are not done overnight. We need to give our auditors appropriate time to look at the numbers. So I'm sure we're months away before there'll be a final report. But we're making this a priority. We're going to move it along as expeditiously as possible.
It was initially estimated at 50 million, now 30 million. Is it possible that after your team looks at it, it could drop even further?
I guess one would hope. It could also be higher. Who knows? So until we really get in there, it's hard to prejudge what the outcome will be in terms of the final number.
As a money man yourself, your first reaction when you hear about a surprise $30 million shortfall?
Well, always a concern, but we've done audits of Rochester City School before. The last audit was released in 2017, covered 2014 and 2016, and back then we identified weaknesses in terms of how payroll was being managed, the use of purchasing cards. So there have been some issues before. Whether those issues are what contributed to the current shortfall or whether there's another dynamic, we don't know yet. But obviously this has been a sore point for a long period of time. But fiscal management is very important for any school district. It's the underpinning to providing a good education. So I know that's a concern for everybody in the Rochester area.
If you find any faults in how things were done, what happens after that?
Well, we make recommendations. Our recommendations aren't enforceable or aren't binding in that sense. So it really depends on the goodwill and the good judgment of the people running the entity that we're auditing to make sure they implement. In worst case scenario, and I'm not in any way implying that's a situation here, if you find a situation where a law is violated or somebody stole money, well, then law enforcement gets involved. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but the most likely outcome is that we'll identify weaknesses and some recommendations that need to be implemented to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Have you seen this in any school districts around the state before?
Oh, we certainly have other situations where you've had weak internal controls or poor fiscal management where you end up with a shortfall within a budget year. It doesn't happen too often, but it does happen.
How much resource in your office is going to have to go to this to even get it done in just a few months?
Well, we've been in a priority. We have about a team of about 8 auditors who are going to focus on this. Our head of our audit division here in Rochester understands how important this is, that we get to the bottom of it as quickly as possible.
Difficult job to do this because you have to go line by line, right?
Yeah, well, I mean that's part of what they're focusing on now and planning out the scope of the audit. What are the areas that they need to look at? But that's what they do. That's what they're trained to do, and that's their job. As I said, we were in here not too many years ago. Probably wouldn't have been in for a couple more years, except that we have this problem now, so we're in today.
Excellent. My last question: there had been talk of a state group coming in and monitoring the finances, I guess, in perpetuity until things are solved. What are your thoughts in having a state entity like that get involved in a district?
It's happened in other parts of the state where there's been a monitor, and sometimes the monitor takes different forms. Sometimes it's just on the fiscal side, sometimes it's more broadly. State Education Department often plays a role, and typically it's been pursuant to state legislation as well. So we've seen it work in some cases well, we've seen it work perhaps not so well in other cases. That obviously is going to be a judgment of, I think, State Education Department and the legislature as to whether or not they need to put a formal structure and what that structure would look like.
Great. Anything else you'd like to add on this particular topic?
Just that we understand it's very important to all the stakeholders with the Rochester City Schools and the City of Rochester. Obviously, Rochester City School District being a dependent school district on the city, when there's a problem like this, it has implications for the finances of the City of Rochester. I know that's why the mayor is very concerned about it. But obviously everybody in the community wants to make sure that we understand what happened and that we make sure it doesn't happen again.
Great. We'll get a couple, 2 shots. Are you going to be meeting with any of the players?
No, our team did. Well, I spoke with the mayor and spoke with Simon Bronson, and our team met with the school officials on Friday. But I'll let them do their work. I won't interfere with that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So you were coming here independent of this particular?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
just so
I was here for, Bob Duffy invited me, and then we did a nice visit to Hickey Freeman this morning.
Oh,
got myself a suit, and
as you should.
As I should, made in America, and then I walked the picket line for a while at UAW.
Okay, very nice.
So we kind of Bob was the reason we came, but then we put a few other things together. So.
Oh, yeah.
And
So-
we got to see you.
See, it's worked out for me as well. They have the Hickey Freeman sale once a year, and it's like a Rochester bonanza. It's crazy.
You know, years ago I went to the factory store, but I never went inside the factory.
Yeah.
It's really incredible. I mean, it's unbelievable, and it's been there, 100 years.
Yeah.
It's like a little UN. I mean, the diversity of the workforce there is
Yeah.
incredible.
And to their credit, they stuck by
Yeah.
despite the changes in the
Yeah.
neighborhood, and then
Yeah.
even the new owner was like, "We're going to keep doing this," which is incredible.
It's amazing. And they have a great relationship with the union. It's really
Oh, I didn't know
positive.
that.
Yeah. So actually, the unions were the ones who said you should come by.
Oh.
And so I had John, I'm forgetting his last name, from management side, and Gary Bonadonna from the Workers Unite, and it was great. It was really
Yeah.
great.